The biggest heist in Canadian history is just hitting the airwaves. And it's an outright attack against one segment of the population that the current government thinks is racist, unacceptable, and shouldn't be tolerated. Good morning, welcome to Renegade News. I'm your host, Glenn Kowalski. You've likely been watching the news about the Canadian Trucker Freedom Convoy that's going on in Ottawa right now. Hopefully, you already have a completely different view of what's going on than is being represented in the mainstream media. If you don't, you're either too lost to help, or it's really time that you started looking beyond the mainstream media for your news and getting real news instead of propaganda. Because even though Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau accuses the movement of being about hate, abuse, and racism, if you've watched any of the hours and hours of video of the actual convoy, you know that that's absolute total nonsense. But today, we're not talking about the convoy. We're talking about the crowdfunding company GoFundMe that has currently collected over $10 million from donors who are in support of the Freedom Convoy. Well, in the biggest heist that I've ever been able to find anyway in Canadian history, GoFundMe is not returning all donated loot, and they're also not giving it to the truckers. Instead, GoFundMe, in their infinite wisdom, has decided to donate your funds, $9 million of them, to causes that they feel appropriate. According to GoFundMe, we have evidence from law enforcement that previous peaceful demonstrations has become an occupation. They go on to say that we will work with organizers to send all remaining funds to credible and established charities verified by GoFundMe. Now, while we can't know exactly right now what those causes are, we do know in the past that GoFundMe has supported things like BLM after several people were murdered at BLM events. They've supported changing the sex of mental health patients with gender dysphoria. And they've donated to causes like raising funds for artists who aren't good enough to make money on their own just because they happen to be gay, and to things like Planned Parenthood and more. They've also previously blocked funds being raised for non-woke causes like Kyle Rittenhouse's defense, parents trying to stop critical race theory in their schools, and when some white students were evicted from their homes simply because they were white. If you donated to the Freedom Convoy, though, not all hope is lost. GoFundMe has graciously provided refunds if you go and request them on their site before February 19th. But they won't refund by default, which clearly they should do since not everyone is going to see the news at all. But I recommend that you don't actually do that. Don't go and request the refund. Instead, go to your credit card company to freeze the payment and put a chargeback request in instead. Each chargeback is going to increase GoFundMe's fees, and it's going to ding their merchant accounts every time. And it's one powerful way for us freedom lovers to tell the woke corporations that we're here, we matter, and we're not going to take it anymore. And next time you're doing something like this, use Bitcoin or a privacy coin like Monero to transfer those funds directly to the parties instead.